way up. Double use as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up. Counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up. Way up, pray up. On track, now we going way up. Now we going way up. Now we going on track, now we going way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. Keep the same energy. Work on being better when I'm 70.
Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. As always, it's your boy Mac. Joining me today is my friend and co-host Corey Walsh of Fear the Sword, along with Locked on Cavs co-host Chris Manning. Chris, I'm going to go to you first, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's a pleasure to be on with you guys and chat with you amid obviously nothing's going on in the Cavs world, but it's good to chat with you guys.
Yeah, nothing groundbreaking yet. We're still waiting on that big news. Corey, how you doing, man?
I have heart palpitations every 20 minutes, but overall it's fine.
Heart palpitations
Corey,
stemming from what?
I'm worried about you if you're having heart palpitations every 20 minutes. Like, call a doctor and be like, hey.
All I need is Collin Sexton news in some facet, and I'm pretty sure I'll be fine.
Oh, man. If
not, then there are more serious things coming ahead for me.
It might be a long off season for you then, my friend. So you might want to keep a doctor on standby.
For sure.
That said, Chris, man, we've seen the Cavs make a couple of different moves this offseason already. As Corey already mentioned, nothing on the Collin Sexton front just yet. But I do want to hear your thoughts. And I know you just talked about this a bit with Evan on Locked On. I want to hear your thoughts on the Hal Neto and Robin Lopez additions and what that can mean and when adding two veterans like that to such a young core.
Yeah, I think it just makes a lot of logical sense. Like, I think if you looked at the end of last year, it was like Jared Allen goes down. They don't have Ricky Rubio for half the year. Sexton obviously is out. Robin Lopez is just like going to be in a very large backup center who's probably better than Moses Brown, probably better than Ed Davis, at least bigger than Ed Davis. Like, he's 7 feet, like 280, and Ed Davis was like 6'9", 218, playing the minutes at the 5. That's just like hard to do with the way the Cavs play. I think those guys are just really competent. And I think if you were going to do the Rubio thing, you had to do Hal Neto or like another veteran guard. Like, I don't know how you could have. It's seemingly what they want out of that position. It seems like they really just had to be like, hey, we're going to get a veteran and bring him in and try to stop guys this mission. I think these are guys that, like, obviously aren't going to drive the overwhelming amount of success the Cavs may or may not have next year, but they're like necessary veteran things at the end of your bench. And then I think, like, Isaiah Mobley on a two-way. We'll see if they maybe get a young point guard next offseason or something to develop under Rubio for a year. Like, I think there are some seeds to watch going forward with how they move on from these guys as well.
That's fair to say. Yeah, I was got to say that heading into the NBA draft, especially into that second round, I was wondering whether or not they would opt to try and bring in some type of presence at the backup point guard position. The Ricky Rubio, deal, glad that's out of the way, although it hasn't been finalized yet, to my knowledge, and we'll talk about that here in a bit. But I was thinking that they would have taken a shot on a guy that could have shored up, some time there to kind of really give DG a rest. But it didn't pan out that way. So glad we did manage to bring in Hal Neto, especially after seeing Tyus Jones and DeLon Wright go off the board for much higher salaries. So that does make me feel good. I think I'm of the mindset that we got Rubio pretty cheaply. It wasn't something that I felt bad about giving him. What was it, like 6.14 over the course of those 3 years?
Yeah, it's like 5.8 to start, and then goes up from there, with the last year not fully guaranteed.
Yeah, so I felt really good about that, and I don't know whether or not he would have been available at that price had he not been injured.
Probably not. I mean, the Cavs might have had to give him the full mid-level to keep him. Like, that's just like a realistic possibility if he doesn't get hurt. And yes, his age and everything, but like, it also feels like to me, guys, that I would wonder, like, if we could. It's maybe always sometimes hard to know this stuff and to figure some of this out, but like, I wonder if this ultimately was like the best multi-year offer he got, and if like that's part of the reason he's back to. It's like, right, like he maybe could have. He probably could have. There was stuff last year when they got him that it was like they might buy him out, and like teams are eyeing. Like there was the Warriors' interest that was leaked like very early before I feel like this even started, right? And like maybe like this is a way to be like, look, like we really are. Or I feel like the way they're going about bringing him back and paying him what they are is a sign that they're like, hey, we really value, and like we can also pay you more money than like a team that's just going to let you ring hunt at this stage in your career. And also, like, we're gonna like we know you're not gonna be able to play, and that's cool with us. And I think that has to be a part of this discussion. Really, is that they kind of know that Rubio's probably not playing until we get to like January.
I asked Corey this on the last episode, but I also want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think it was a tough sell to Hal Neto about coming in knowing that Rubio looms?
So the reporting out there, like from Fedor and some others, and talking to people within the Cavs, like it seems like Antonio Lang has a really good relationship with him. Antonio Lang, Cavs assistant coach, came from Utah. I believe is coaching this. No, he's one of like the lead assistants. Mike Garrity is coaching the Summer League team. I think there's also just like sometimes you just like will take. I feels like in the league at a certain point you just will take some of those jobs, right? Like, yes, he played a lot in Washington, but maybe like it doesn't seem like the market was going to give him like the role he wanted, and he wasn't going to get the money he wanted. And this is just like, hey, if he knows a coach he has a good relationship with, you're going to play and make like almost $2 million like that. I don't know. I feel like ultimately like that just kind of wins out more than like, you know, you're not going to maybe play as much you want. Certainly there's probably a competitor to him that wants to play more and will hope to play more and push for minutes and stuff. But like I feel like the connection maybe softens a little, at least that's what you're hoping for. And look, it's a minimum deal. Like if it's not perfect, that's fine. It's a minimum contract.
Could you see a scenario in which they kind of up his trade value by giving him those minutes and flipping them come the deadline if Rubio's ready to go?
There's just no way I think you flip minimums just for minimums, and I think keeping that depth is going to be really important. Like Rubio might not play back-to-backs. Like I don't feel like any of us. I want to know what you guys think about this. Like I don't think any of us can like say today that we know exactly what Ricky Rubio is going to look like. I have no idea.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
He's coming off a second torn ACL, and he's over 30, and like, you don't know. And like, even if he comes back in January and looks good, I would imagine the plan is like, let's bring him back really slow, and we also signed for multiple years. So like, we're not going to go full out on maximizing him next year. We're going to try to keep him fresh for the year after and the year after, right? Like that's what I would just assume like this is a play for the whole year and kind of marathon, not a sprint kind of mentality.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. A good insurance policy to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the best thing for Rubio also is that athleticism was definitely not one of his strong suits as a point guard. So him getting re-aggravating another knee injury, it's not like we're thinking like in Collin's case with the meniscus, our major worry was that his athleticism, which I would argue is probably one of his main strengths, could be diminished. At least with Rubio, it's just like he was always such a technical type of player that the only like as long as his brain doesn't get affected by an injury, that doesn't really diminish most of his value. But like Chris said, like double ACL tear on the same knee and 30 definitely are not positives when you're going through the pros and cons of bringing Ricky Rubio back.
Stuff. My knees hurt like thinking about tearing my ACL like twice. Honestly, it's just like I'm like that's hard. Like we don't know. Like I don't think he's only done maybe like one interview, and it was like in Spanish. So I can't even like speak to like exactly like we just don't know. Like he will be a guy that get media day. I'm sure like one of the more interesting like he's also always willing to like give you longer answers, right? When people like ask him questions, he's a guy that I just feel like there will be like a lot to ask about him in media, not just like him coming back, like what was appealing about it, how he's doing in his rehab, but also like, you know, is it weird to come back to a team that like did just like trade your salary after you're really important to them? Like there's just like a lot of like
they ended up with both Cares and Rubio. That's crazy.
Yeah, like Kobe, like what if that like it worked out like for whatever reason somehow. But like it's just like there's a lot about the Rubio thing that I just think is really interesting, and like their interest in him was so telegraphed. You know what I mean? It was like before free agency even started, it was like, okay, we this is our plan. Like we would like to bring Ricky Rubio back, and certainly like maybe they knew the DeLon Wright price was going to be high. Maybe they knew that Tyus Jones' price was going to be like well out of their price range, but like it was very clear that it's like we want this thing and we want this guy, and like that was very telegraphed from like the very much beginning of how they approached it.
Yeah, someone who I hope we get to see on media day for the Cavs is Collin Sexton. Overall, like, how do you think this restricted free agency period has affected Collin? And do you think his camp has been viewing this like as a negative relationship between him and the Cavs based on the amount of time it's taken for this deal to go through, and B, just seeing the deals that other teams have been signing their younger players, like Anthony Simons as an example, to $100 million?
the Simons one to me is like where I look at him just like I think Simons is like really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Collin Sexton like has to look at that and Clutch's agent. You have to look at that and be like, that guy's worth like $8 million more a year than me. Like, are we sure about that? Like, are we sure? Like, I know I'm coming out of injury, but like, are we sure? Like, is that what we're saying? Like, there's just like some weirdness with that I think is interesting. The relationship part I don't really like feel like I can speak to because that's just like I think these are like it's not like Collin's camp is like obviously like has his family and like his feelings, but it's also like an agency that represents like Darius Garland and a certain guy that used to play for the team and other former Cavs, and like they're gonna have an ongoing relationship with Clutch. Like that's just gonna be an ongoing thing where like I think that's just I just think restricted free agency is just like an impossible thing to have to do right now. Like DeAndre Ayton doesn't have any offer sheet either. There are two
That's crazy
cap
to me.
fees.
That is crazy to me.
Yeah, and like I think even a couple of years ago, it's like one with Chandler Parsons when he did that deal with Dallas before he like ended up getting the mega payday in Memphis. Like Dallas went out of its way to be like, we're gonna give you like this very player friendly contract and recruit you and make it so painful that like your team isn't gonna match that. Like no one's doing that now anymore, and like I think that makes it hard to be a restricted free agent. It's just like I think being in restricted free agency now just feels like a very different proposition than it did even 5 years ago. And then coming off injury, not knowing where he's at, all that stuff. Like I think there's just like an unfortunate squeeze on Collin that has made this really complicated.
Yeah, I feel like the tough part, especially with restricted free agency this year, is that there was not a lot of teams that had cap in the first place, and then also restricted free agency, like you said, Chris, is now kind of it feels like the team's just dangling the asset in front of other teams, being like, if you guys want it, you can have him, but you're gonna have to pay the price that we necessarily want, and if you don't, we're not even going to look at it twice. Like the Dallas, there was heavy links for Dallas for a little bit. And then it came out no less than 24 hours later that the Cavs were not interested in any deal that Dallas could even offer. So then Dallas is like, why would I even bother making an offer if you're just going to sign him up anyway?
Yeah.
I mean, the team is doing this obviously, but there's such a personal element to this, in my opinion. Like, as you said, Corey, like he's seeing guys like Simons and Brunson get paid, pretty pennies out of here, and he has to be wondering to himself, what the hell do I have to do to actually get the recognition or at least the monetary value that I'm looking for? So it's just crazy to me.
I like really empathize with Collin just because like he was the best young guy they had for a little bit there. Darius, I think, is surpassed him. That's just uncool. And the Cavs just like have decided that they're willing to pay Darius Garland a lot more money than they're willing to pay Collin Sexton. That's just like a fact. Like you I don't know if you guys have got like some of the comments like on Twitter and stuff that are like, or like I was listening to 923 the other day, and like they had people calling in being like, Collin Sexton deserves that $193 million contract, not Darius Garland. And it's just like, that's just not where we're like, I think that Darius is better, but also like the Cavs have clearly decided like we're giving Darius Garland this.
They've chosen their horse. Yeah.
Yeah. They like, and like you can still kind of like have both. There's like ways they can figure that out, at least in the short term. But like, and like if you're born, like I think I'm in the camp where it's like if you told me I had to pick one, I would probably pick Sexton over LeVert as like a more impactful player going forward. I think I would lean Sexton in that. And like how you manage that is its own thing, but it's like I just empathize with him. He just got like squeezed in such an uncomfortable way. It's just like it's not exactly the same, obviously, but it's like Isaiah Thomas got like Cavs legend Isaiah Thomas.
Here we go. Yeah.
Got squeezed by the Celtics and didn't get paid, and then like he comes to Cleveland, doesn't get paid there, obviously, and he's never made the money that he probably thought he was going to make. Collin's probably going to end up like not having to sign like minimum contracts going forward. Like I don't think that's where this is headed because he's much younger, the injury isn't as severe, all that stuff, but like he's just getting squeezed in a way that is just the unfortunate part of the business. It's like the really ugly side of the business that he's just getting like pushed in this direction that is not going to let him maybe maximize what he's probably worth in a situation. And the Cavs also didn't sign up to like just give him $20 million last summer either. Like it's just been this whole build to where we're at right now.
It's so shitty, that he has to go through that, but it is, it's a business. You have to look at it that way, especially from the general management standpoint. But from Colin's standpoint, if you were to entertain signing the qualifying offer and enter unrestricted free agency next season, what do you think it would actually take him to have to do to be compensated in the way that he is reportedly wanting?
Can I flip that on you guys for a second?
Sure.
I want to know before I need to I just can't imagine. I just personally can't imagine a scenario where that happens. That just breaks. He's obviously not that was the Zion fear for a while with New Orleans, right? It was he's just going to take the qualifying, hit free agency, get out of here. He's not that in that situation and at that level and viewed that way. But that just feels like such a crazy thing to me.
It's a large gamble for sure.
Yeah, and is there a world where you guys if you were him that you would feel you're just going to do this at a certain point?
I think just based upon the stories that we've seen, being reported out there, being offered, I think, what was it, 12 to 15 mil is a lot of what along the lines of what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, Jake Fisher had it as very similar to the Jordan Clarkson contract was their initial offer, which is 3 and 51 to 17 per.
That's not terrible because you could still, at his age, you could get that money, get the guaranteed money there. You have some type of insurance just in case some unfortunate injury happens and hit unrestricted free agency in your prime, in your physical prime. So you could certainly go that route. But to answer your question, I think the longer this plays out, I certainly think as he sees, as he's seen these guys get paid, it's a possibility. If you're saying, you know what, man, F it, I'm just going to go ahead and bet on myself, sign the qualifying offer, and try and put up the best season that I can within the confines of this offense. And that's the other thing to this. What is his role? What does his fit look like this season? Now that you have these additional pieces. So what does Collin Sexton's best game look like on this team? So that's a large gamble for him to take, but I still certainly think it's possible. If things continue to go along the lines they are. Clutch aims to get their guys paid, but there is a fine line that the team has to stray and tiptoe on there to do what's best for the team.
I think the thing with Collin Sexton, that's I guess if you were in his mindset, the side that would make him want to try to just take the qualifying offer and go is that the major reason that Collin Sexton isn't going to get the money he wants is because of this meniscus injury. But when you take away that injury, he has been one of the more durable players on the Cavs throughout his tenure of being on the team. And he's performed increasingly better every single year he's been a Cavalier, minus his 11-game start to last year, which has a bunch of asterisks to why you could point out why he got off to such a slow start. So I would think in his mind, if he thinks he can come back and play around the same amount of games he played in his first 3 years on the team, I think he could make an argument to himself that a team is could pay me more than I'm getting paid right now. But you also don't know if this injury is necessarily the one that could start the
start. Yeah,
because Derrick Rose is an example of just all it took was one, and then it just all started crumbling down from there. Collin Sexton didn't come in with the Steph Curry injury history where you were constantly worried he was going to get hurt the entire time either. So
can I confess to Steph's? I really thought Steph was not going to amount to anything just based purely upon those ankle injuries. I really thought that he would have a short-lived career.
I think when you just don't have that medical flag with Sexton, I could see him just thinking to himself, because he's a very motivated guy. I think he believes in himself more than anyone else in the world pretty much. Yeah. So if anyone would think that I can do this and just rebound my value off of an unlucky injury, I think Sexton would be the person that could do it.
The thing that I think is clouds all of us, and I'm sure this factors into, I know this factors into how the Cavs think about it, is the 11 games you mentioned. I don't know what to do with any of that. I throw my hands up and I'm just you could convince me he needed time to figure it out. You could convince me he was starting to figure it out. You could convince me it wasn't you could convince me of a ton of different things, but I don't feel any of the arguments are even that persuasive. It's just a very,
and that's why I asked what would his optimal role have been last season? What does a perfect Collin Sexton season look like even last season? Knowing that they want to feature Garland a little bit more, knowing that Rubio is looking like he's closing out games.
Yeah.
What is a perfect role for Collin Sexton moving forward? Now, these are all things that factor into how much you're willing to pay him. So I
Yeah.
don't even know, like, if he would have had a great season this year, if the Cavs would have been willing to shell out and get into max territory
Yeah.
or get into luxury tax territory.
Yeah, I think the two things for me that I would say like would make the fit like cleaner and like I think would also differentiate him from LeVert a little bit in an important way would be number one, 3-point shooting and at volume, right? Like he can shoot the three, like that is a thing he's now done. Like last year it wasn't good, but like I kind of just wonder if that was a weird 11-game blip. He also had like that January in his third season where like he just couldn't shoot for a month. Like it was just this weird like thing where he just like go to NBA.com, look at their stats page, and look at January of 2020, 2021. Collin, I think, was at like 20% from three. It was something just like absurd for the whole month, and it didn't make any sense. But then he figured it out, and it was fine. And like I don't know if it's like a comfort thing with him for shooting from three, but like I think the volume for him, wherever he goes or whatever he's going to do, that volume has to get turned up. I think it's just going to be an important thing, and particularly catch and shoot ones. And then I think secondly, I think cutting. I think he's an underrated cutter. He's very if the explosiveness is there in the way that it was pre-injury, that's a way he can really, I think, make an impact. He's very quick. He's powerful as an athlete, even at his size at 6'1". Like, there's a lot to like if you can push him in that direction, and if he's willing to get pushed in that direction, if he's comfortable doing it. And that's part of this too. Like, does he want to play on ball? Does he want to run a ton of pick and roll, or is he willing to do some of the other stuff that would build in some versatility with him? And I think that's where he was going last year before the injury, and that it just obviously we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
You go back. Oh, okay. So the thing that was interesting about what you said about the volume is that I remember there was the point around that San Antonio game in, I think, 2 years ago with Darius and Collin, where JB pretty much came out and said like, hey, like these guys need to ramp up their 3-point shooting an extreme amount because they're both effective shooters. They just were both gun shy pretty much. It felt like for large spurts of their time together. And then Darius obviously last year took a major step up in his volume 3-point shooting, and we saw the benefits of what that did for that Cavs offense last year. Do you feel like Sexton just doesn't feel like it's part of like his toolbox to be a volume shooter, or do you think he just wants to like kind of stay where he's comfortable?
I think it's a little bit of both, probably. I think there is a comfort factor. I mean, I've looked up like his cleaning the glass stuff real quick as we're talking, because I wanted to see. I just wanted to refresh like those numbers. So every year of his career, he's been like above average and shots at the rim, and then like his best season that third year, he was 83rd percentile of combo guards at the rim. So he's taking like a ton of shots at the rim. Last year he was at 41%, which is also a lot of shots at the rim and would have been a career high. 26% of his shots are from three. He takes a lot of mid-range shots as well. So there's just like this. I think he likes to get downhill. I think he likes that pull-up. I think he likes trying to get to the rim. And like, but it's also like you're not getting the foul drawing with him is pretty good too for the most part. You know, like that's a legitimate skill, and I can understand like him leaning into that. I wonder if there's a way to like blend those two things. And look, I think one of the intriguing parts of Rubio, and like obviously I think we saw the Rubio Garland stuff really thrive last year, but it's like I think Rubio and Sexton can make a lot of sense because Rubio can help manage some of the playmaking stuff, help manage some of the game management stuff. I think Evan Mobley could help with that too, right? Like Evan Mobley's upside is a lot of creation. It's a lot of taking some of that off of Collin's plate. And if Collin can provide you some of that juice in that other way that you need and provide a speed element, I don't think a single other Cav really has. You can like, this is how I keep talking myself into this, you know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, like they have Abaji and Okoro and like they can cobble together wing stuff. It's just like, there's a template of a guy here who is like good. And I tend to think he's like almost like slightly underrated at this point. Like I really do think Collin might be like just very slightly underrated for what he actually is. Even if what he is kind of niche and there's growth to be had here, I think he might be underrated for how efficient and kind of powerful he is as a scorer.
I think so too. I mean, I think you're rarely going to see that, you know, where people talk about these things at, you know, whether that be social media or otherwise, people tend to lean on one end or the other. You rarely find some people, you know, in the middle in regards to that. Because the truth is, in many people's eyes, he's underrated. And also in those same eyes, he could be a little bit overrated. to most of his avid fans. So I think a lot of these things would have played out this season in regards to, at the point that you pointed to, in regards to Rubio possibly helping out, in regards to playmaking, facilitating, taking some of those responsibilities off of him. Evan Mobley taking some of that responsibility off of him. I think we would have saw some of these things play out, but unfortunately, we only got a 10.5 game sample size. And what the hell do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that is also kind of interesting with Collin Sexton is he's one of those players that over his years in the NBA, he starts the year off very slow, it seems like, and then ramps up towards the All-Star break and then continues to go on a tear for the rest of the season. So I feel like just that 11 game sample size, none of it really worked in his benefit. Not only did he have to adapt to a new role, he also, like I said, is just one of those players you kind of just have to wind up and get ready for him to perform better month by month. So I don't know. It's just, you could make a ton of, like Chris said, you can think of a dozen things for Collin Sexton to why those 11 games you can just throw your hands up.
What would the max number you'd be comfortable with Collin be? Assuming you're not going to be. I also want to say this. Assuming rightly, I think knowing the Cavs are not going to be a luxury tax team to pay Collin Sexton, they're just not. And so that gives them 21. If they dump Jetty, that gets them to about $21 million that they could use on Collin or for that one roster spot to fill it.
I feel like for me personally, it'd have to be somewhere between 18 to 20 would probably be where I'd want it to be, because I feel like at some point you have to do a favor for the player as well, because you don't want just a sour guy in the locker room. But Collin, I don't think would be that guy. It seems like he really likes being around this team from what I read. The team likes having him around. So overall, I feel like are we
factoring the year into this too? Because we know that was one of the offers, the 20 mil a year at one point was on the table, but the year amount was the issue, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of that, and I also just think it seems like what has happened is the Cavs are using every bit of leverage they can to squeeze this. And I can understand
That's what you got to do.
It's I get it
from a managerial standpoint.
I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable, but it's they could look at Darius Garland's extension. They could have been we're going to wait a year. We're going to make you show that you can do this for another year. We're going to maximize our flexibility and not give you $193 million up front. Right now, we're not going to they could have waited. And you know what they did? They just gave him the contract. They just were cool. We're happy about this. And then the Collin thing is the exact opposite. It is they are squeezing, if the stuff where it's they're now offering 12 to 15, if that's where we're at with this, that's such a squeeze from where he's at. They're saying, go get an offer from Indiana, go get one from San Antonio, find us a sign and trade that we will help you accommodate. We have the leverage here. That's to me what it feels like, and that's a very that makes me that makes me uncomfortable on Collin's behalf.
Yeah.
I
was just gonna say, from a personal standpoint, it just that's where I'm at with it. But from business, that's what you have to do. It's just smart business. From a managerial standpoint, for me, I'm in that same range, 18 to 20, if all things considered, because I believe, like I said before, that's around what he was being offered. I think he'll be a bargain by whatever deal he signs next. I think by the end of whatever deal he signs, whether that be the qualifying offer, which we hope not, for both his sake and for the Cavs, just to have him long term, and for him to have some financial stability in regards to possible future injuries, things of that nature. I think that he will be a bargain by the end of whatever deal he signs next, just because I feel like people are really undervaluing what he brings to the table.
I think, Chris, when you think about this Collin Sexton deal that could happen with the Cavs, do you think if they sign him to a longer term deal, that they view it more as retaining the asset of Collin Sexton to then move down the road? Or do you feel like it's more of a move that they view him as part of their young team moving forward?
I think it could be either. I think if they re-sign him and it's great next year, you just move forward with it and you go with him. I think you could also decide this is a contract that we can then trade for something else. Next summer will be to me the next 12 months are going to be such an interesting stretch, because Darius' extension kicks in next summer. This would be year one of Collin, but that's kicking in. And Jarrett's still at 20, but Evan's still in his rookie contract. Evan Mobley, not Evan Damrell. Evan's making much, unfortunately for him and I, making much less money than Evan Mobley's going to be making his rookie contract. But it's like, by NBA standards, like a very cheap, affordable contract.
Mm-hmm.
Next summer, Kevin Love comes off the books. And then also, Caris LeVert's contract runs out. I don't know if you're paying both Sexton and LeVert. So, like, are you picking one? Are you, like, flipping one of them for something else? Are you?
That's
trying
where
to
I think this is heading for LeVert, at least. I don't think he's going to be a long-term component.
Would you do, like, LeVert? Like, I was flipping around, like, looking at teams that maybe could, like, be moving stuff around, or, like, part of the other thing that I think, I don't know this, but I wonder if part of the reason the Sexton market is where it is and the 8 market is where it is that, like, some of these teams that have cap space, the 2 teams with cap space, Indiana and San Antonio, are, like, either don't love the guys, which is possible, or they're saying we're going to wait and see if we could, like, finagle something we like better as this Kevin Durant thing figures itself out, and teams need to, like, move stuff around, and, like, the Cavs do that to get Jared Allen. Can, like, one of these teams, like, snag someone they like?
Biggest winner of that trade, by the way.
Kobe Altman just privately just, like, you know, got that one right. Like, I wonder if there's some of that's like squeezing this as well. And then if you're the Cavs, it's like, is now a time where you're looking at, you know, either Markkanen or LeVert and being like, we have this salary that we can flip somewhere. Is there, like, you know, like, would you trade it for, like, Bojan Bogdanovic from Utah if Utah is really rebuilding? Like, would you flip LeVert for him or try to? Would you call about, like, Joe Harris if like they're trying to shit salary out of Brooklyn? Like, I think you're looking at those kind of things with those contracts, and Sexton could be one of those pieces. And I think it just depends on, like, how and when you want to cash that in. But I think also, like, to a certain degree, at least, if you are going to, like, sign him, do a deal, I think you also probably have to be comfortable with that deal. I think you can't, I think assuming that you can then just, like, recoup your value by signing him is a tricky thing. But I also, like, I don't think what they have is good enough where they could, like, lose him for nothing or, like, trade him for, like, just stuff, right? Like the Dallas thing, for instance, like, none of the stuff Dallas could give you realistically or would want to give you doesn't really do it for me. Like, they don't have good picks. Like, the role players are good, but it's like, is that really moving the needle for you? It's not in the way that Collin might, or you should be aiming for him to, at least.
Yeah, I think I don't get about people who think that I think a lot of people look at this last season for the Cavs without Collin Sexton, and they think that the team, just because they did well this season without him, means that we don't need him necessarily at all.
They're better off without him. Didn't you know that, Corey?
Oh, I have heard that from a few people, but I think people forget that the reason the Cavs didn't make the playoffs in general is because they didn't have anyone who could reliably score outside of Darius Garland and Jared Allen basically being out for, like, the last part of the season, then playing with a broken hand. But overall, like, Collin Sexton would have helped us so immensely in both the Nets and the Hawks series, just being someone else that Darius could kind of, like, lean on when stretches where they were just, because all defense is really to do in the postseason or the play-in games was just focus on Darius and let the rest of the Cavs kind of squirm and hope for the best from scoring. I mean, Lauri Markkanen performed well in the Hawks game, but outside of Darius and Lowry, you can't really look at anyone else. So Collin would be a huge plus. And unless you're going to get someone in a restricted free agency trade that's going to at least replicate the bucket getter that we're looking for. And Caris LeVert, to me, doesn't really fit that bill because I feel like he is either hot or extremely cold as a shooter. Then I don't really necessarily want to even entertain the sign-in trades.
Yeah, I mean, you needed somebody to go out there and get you a bucket. Collin is among that bunch is the best that the Caps have to offer outside of Darius Garland at this point in time. Caris LeVert, it was a fine addition for what he was, for what they were able to acquire him for. And obviously the pieces that they acquired for him, the biggest one, Rubio, is back in town, which is great. But I think the need for Caris at this point, past this season, becomes less and less of an important role. So I do think you need to be evaluating those options. Same can be said for Lowry. I think when they made the trade, that Larry Nance trade there, I don't think they made that trade thinking, hey, Lowry Markkanen is a vital piece to what we have going on here. Although the big three lineup, 3 7-footers, proved a lot of people wrong, including myself, this season. I don't think they made the extension with him thinking, hey, we can't move this guy in the future. I think they need to be looking at all these pieces here thinking, hey, maybe If we can jump on the right deal, we consolidate somewhere, we do that.
Yeah, I also think if you look at how this is maybe the most boring thing I keep talking about, but like if you look at the contract sheets, the Kobe Altman built stuff into contracts that he can then trade.
Mm-hmm.
Lauri Markkanen's last year is not guaranteed. Ricky Rubio's last year is sorry. Markkanen's last year is partially guaranteed. Rubio's last year is partially guaranteed. Jetty Osman is function expiring contract. There's like that's on purpose. Like that is.
Speaking of Jetty, do you think that Jetty and Windler, by the start of the 22-23 season, do you still think they'll be holding roster spots?
I think one of them is probably gone. I would guess probably Jetty would be my guess. Just I think like if you're trying to maximize your space under the tax and give yourself maybe the most money possible to like sign Sexton or like match an offer sheet that comes, that's the one you do. It's like $3 million of difference. I think keeping one of them makes some sense from like a flexibility perspective, just to like maybe add onto a trade you want to make later. Like Wilner's at $4 million, and like so if you add him to like marketing, you get above 20. Like there's that's at least like a workable number, and like also just like a depth perspective. Like I know they have RJ Nembhard on a 2-way as a wing, but I think like they would like to get him some more G League time this upcoming season because he like just basically only was on the Cavs roster because of the COVID stuff and injury stuff last year. They think could use just like that one wing on the back end to just provide some depth. But I mean, like, do I think like they're like essential to the roster? Probably not. But I think one just if they're going to bring back Sexton, they have 15 full roster spots right now. They have to move someone on, and those are the two guys that you would do because like if you're like Dean Wade or Lamar Stevens, you could move on from, and like their contracts are not guaranteed. Those guys are like actual depth that I think JB Bickerstaff likes. I don't think he's like. Sign me up for more Jetty Osman.
We saw that play out towards the end of last season.
Yeah, and it's like I don't like Windler, like just because of injuries and just bad luck, like has not looked. He's not played well. Like that's just where we're at. That's where it's at with him. So, I think like one of those guys seems like I think part of the reason like maybe the Rubio thing hasn't happened is that like they're maybe trying to do a sign and trade, send Jetty or Windler that way, clear the roster spot, and then you have the Sexton situation that you can take advantage of. But like that, I mean, because today they could have announced all these things, and did the Cavs announce a single one? No, they did not. Nope. And is this what Wendy did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Shouts to Wendy at King.
That means legendary now.
He brought NBA Twitter together.
The only person who's ever made Twitter like a happy place is Brian Windhorst memes. Unbelievable.
When you think about the restricted free agency, if you have to for like sign and trades, is there any team in particular that you think is realistic that would entice you for a sign and trade?
Ooh, if I could pick anyone, I'd be like, well, the Clippers pre John Wall would have been like Luke Kennard and like a wing. I think what you'd be doing for the Cavs is you're saying like, can we like send this guy to you? In like a way that like you get us something back, but I off the top of my head, like he would like it's like funny because it's like I think that Collin would fit really well with Luka in theory, but it's like that doesn't the Cavs have like no reason.
God, don't want to see that. I've never wanted to see anything like that.
the Collin Luka return game where Luka gets the big Sylvania plop would be incredible. I guess if I could pick one, it would actually be like Keldon Johnson from San Antonio. Just give me him straight up back for Collin. It's fine. I would do it. I would do like he feels a need. Like it's like slightly painful, but like Keldon Johnson would make a lot of sense with what this Cavs roster is and what it needs.
Very underrated. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a Team USA. Yeah. Corey knew exactly where I was going. It's the Team USA Kobe Altman pipeline right there. Played with Darius Garland on those pre-Olympic games as well. Like so. I don't know. That would be the one. If you could do one, it would be Keldon Johnson because it's like the right age, the right skill set. But like, why is San Antonio like? Yes, we will give up Keldon Johnson. Like I don't know.
They're like Josh Primo looks pretty good, so we'll just give up Keldon.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think it's some interesting pieces.
We have Doug McDermott for another year.
He's a veteran presence, so hold it down.
Yeah.
When you think of those sign like with the Jetty and Windler, do you think that that's the only way we would trade one or the other, that it has to be with that sign and trade with Indiana, or do you think there's some other outlet in which we could try to trade Jetty or Windler away for something else, like a pick or something?
Yeah, I think you absolutely could dump one of them somewhere else. I think it's possible. The sign and trade is just the easiest.
Yeah.
It's just like the cleanest one, the least amount of moves. Like maybe like you don't have to like attach a pick to it or something. Like in theory, like I think that would be the hope if you're the Cavs. You're like, we're giving you a roster. We're giving you like a player that's like at least like can be in this league, right? Like, and you're helping us, but we're helping you in the same way. Like, because I don't think they want to like give up an asset to do this, nor should they.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is $6 million for Jetty. It's 6.7 for Jetty, or no, 7. It's like 7 point something this year. 4 for Windler. Like you're not giving up like a real asset to move on from that money. So I think you're just hoping it can be the sign and trade, and then it's like a fake second, like top 56 protected second round pick. Something that like will never, like, it doesn't matter. Like you just say, yeah, he gave you a pick. It's cool. You win the PR press release. That's fine.
Yeah, it just sounds nice. What would be your way too early rotation right now, given the current roster?
Garland. I think you run it back, right? It's Garland. The two, you could convince me of 5 different things. So I'm just going to say.
Is Agbaji there?
It could be Abaji. It could be Okoro. It could be Sexton. It could be Levert. Like, you have 4 options right there. You could convince me of any of them. Probably Markkanen at the 3. They didn't like sign, like they didn't get, like if they got like Keldon Johnson tomorrow, I'd be like, that guy could supplant Larry Markkanen, right? But like also like Markkanen and Love both having to come off the bench is like a complicated thing to manage from a rotation perspective.
Defensively. Yeah.
So I would guess it's like Garland plus pick who you want, like pick who you like believe in, right? Markkanen, Mobley, and Allen. I think it's like just the 2 is the one you could convince me of. Karis LeVert could look great, right? Be like, yeah, ball handling, sure, cool. Abaji could like look great, and you could be like, yes, shooting and defense. We're gonna throw him to this role right away. Okoro could come out and like look really good. Like you could be like, yeah, shooting went up last year. It's continued to look better. His defense is established. All that stuff. Sexton could come in, and it's like we're gonna just roll with this, and we're gonna go dynamic as possible with the ball handling. Like you could convince me of like any of those things, and I'd be like, yeah, that sounds right.
What percentage of you, Chris, think? I know because in the Fear of the Sword group chat, Chris always, his number one comment I always see is Isaac Okoro cutting. What percentage do you think he picks up on your lust for his cutting ability?
You know, so I asked him. I asked him about this once, and he just like, I was like on a Zoom, so it was like already kind of awkward, and he just like looked at me like, "What are you asking me about this for?" And I was just like, "Look, man, I just want to talk about cutting from the corner. Can we just like, please, just like, how do you do it?" And he's just like, "I make eye contact and read the defense," and he was just like moved on. He was just like, "I'm done with this. I don't want to talk about this."
You're like, but can we spend an hour on that?
I mean, look, that's what I would do. Don't tempt me with a good time. Just asking about cutting. All-Star weekend. I was standing next to shouts to Carter and Justin from the Chase Down. I'm standing with talking to them, and like they showed a video of Jared Allen and Isaac Okoro like playing a game, and the thing was they were like quizzing each other and trying to get each other to answer questions. And Jared goes, "What is the thing coach tells you to do more of?" to Isaac, and it was cutting. And Carter and Justin are just like shaking me. It's like, see, it's not. And I'm just like, it's not JB. And I'm just like, I am like just exposed at this moment. yeah. But Okoro cutting, and then like, oh my god, even if he just like. That's like the thing with Sexton too. I just like want some. I'm fascinated to see what the offense looks like next year. This is just getting me like I'm like not quite ready to like have to watch games again yet. Like I need like another just like month of like not.
You gonna watch Summer League?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna inhale that. And like Kenneth, have you guys watched Kenneth Lofton? It's incredible.
Oh, taking advantage of Chet earlier. Yeah,
just my thick large king Kenneth Lofton makes David Roddy look small, and David Roddy is also like a huge human
player.
being.
I love
beefy boy.
Oh, David Roddy camp. Let's go.
Meatball, as you called him. Isn't that what it was?
Yeah, you called him like a turkey.
I love David Roddy so much.
He's my spirit animal.
He's just like the weirdest like huge human being that like shouldn't move the way he does, and I'm just like yes.
I love those like freak athletes, not even in the sense that like they are a freak athlete from just like physicality standpoint, but they don't make sense to their body to athletic ability.
No, it doesn't track. And like Lofton's like that same way. He's just like just this weird big human being, right? And it's just like, yeah, but I just the offense is going to be like I have no idea. Like you could like Abaji makes so much sense, but it's like what is he? Is the spacing just going to dial it up? Do they make a trade to bring him more? I just want to know. That's where the evolution seems like it would have to happen, and Sexton would help that. I would think, right? Like you would think that Sexton would help push that in a certain direction. So I don't know. I'm fascinated by that.
We shall see. And with that being said, as we always tell you guys, if you'd like to be added to the exclusive It's Cavalier Discord chat, you can. You know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com. And we will personally invite you. If you are viewing this on YouTube, I don't think we streamed it on Twitter this time. We typically do. But go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe while you're there. Way too many of you guys not subscribing out there.
Yeah,
paying attention to the It's Cavalier podcast.
Subscribe to them. You come on. What are you doing? Hit the bell. Notifications. What are you doing?
Listen to Chris Manning. Yeah. If you don't
also subscribe to the Locked On podcast for
Yes.
YouTube as well.
I'm gonna extend the invite now. Would you like the guys to come? I would like to invite you guys. We'll do a little home and home. Is that cool with you?
Of course.
That would be awesome.
Mac,
Yeah.
we'll do a little home and home. You guys can help me bully Evan. It'll be great.
Yeah, we'll referee.
Evan would just be like, I'll be like
Simmering.
Corey, I do like the mustache. It's pretty good. Top Gun.
Everyone says it. I have not seen Top Gun, so
go see Top Gun. It's pretty good. Pretty good movie.
Subscribe to the Top Gun YouTube channel while we're at it.
The budget on that is much higher than the budget on any podcast that exists on YouTube.
Oh yeah. We're working with bits and scraps here, and that's a good way to end it.
Yeah.
Have a good night.